Ladies and gentlemen, here we are with another episode of Wave On, episode 19 with Greener Future. And I'm Misty, the host, in Sylvan Lake, Michigan. And I just want to share the code LUNA10 at lunamoonsupyoga.com. And you can save on eco-friendly lip balms. We got the brand new SPF, pineapple colada, and an all-natural one with no flavor. So go check out the retail page. Classes are going to be forming soon on the schedule, and we're on the on season. We're getting ready, but let's dive into the podcast. And I have another special guest from Canada. I'm getting a lot of the Canada leaders of paddleboarding and environmentalists. And today I have Rochelle that's leading Greener Future in Lake Ontario. And actually she has a really cool story about a documentary that she just had launched. And she's going to talk about that, plus some of the other things that they do with their nonprofit. So Rochelle, thank you for coming on to share your experience, and I'm excited to have you here. So thanks.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a good chat.
Great. So yeah, just like I said, you have this awesome movie documentary that you had led, and I had the privilege of watching it, and we really enjoyed it over here in the state of Michigan, being still with the Great Lakes and all. So how did you even get started with that? Because that's how I found you. Really was with the movie Shoreline.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you got to watch it, and glad for the feedback that even though you don't live on Lake Ontario, that it's still relevant to you, because that's the thing. The film is very local, but I feel like it can apply to anyone that lives near water. And that is the message that we want to get out for sure. So I run a nonprofit called A Greener Future, and our focus is litter cleanup and prevention. So each year we do over 100 litter cleanups along the shores of Lake Ontario. And in 2020, because of the pandemic, we had to cancel all of our events. So it was really disappointing, and we were really sad that we wouldn't be able to work with our volunteers. So I wanted to come up with an idea, something that we could do that would still engage people. We knew we would have to kind of do it virtually, because at that point in the pandemic, it was last July that I paddled. So at that point, the pandemic was still pretty new, and we didn't know what all the risks were, or, we didn't want to break any rules, basically. So I decided that I would paddle across the lake, because it was safe out there. I could distance from everyone, and I would still get to go to all the locations that we usually would host litter cleanups, and I would pick up litter along the way, like while I was paddling, and kind of just see what was out there and share it through social media, and people could track my journey. I had a GPS unit on my board so people could see exactly where I was.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And yeah, so that was the original idea. We didn't even intend to make a documentary.
Yeah, you were just doing it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
At the end of it, we had so much footage. We wanted to make a quick 10-minute recap, but we just had so much great footage. And at that point, the pandemic was still going on. And I think at the beginning, a lot of people were like, oh, in a few months it will be over. And here we are a year later, still in it. So
right.
Over the course of the pandemic, we had time to kind of put together all that footage and turn it into something that we could share even further to spread the message and the awareness about plastic pollution in the Great Lakes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how that transitioned for you. You're just doing it, and you were posting about it and stuff, but then end up with this documentary that even reaches out to more people, more distance. And it is so important, because water's connected. So, I mean, what flows through Lake Superior on down through Lake Huron, and then turns into smaller lakes surrounding, the thumb of Michigan, goes through the Detroit River, now gets over to you in your area, and just keeps going into the ocean. So
exactly.
Yeah. It's so huge that if you think about that stream of things. What was like some things that you saw while you were so you how did you well when you paddleboarded the lake and you were going you just so you had one spot you started. Where did you start from?
I started in Kingston, Ontario, which is basically the furthest east part of Lake Ontario before you go into the St. Lawrence and out into the ocean.
Okay.
So, yeah, I basically started right on the edge of where the St. Lawrence River starts and Lake Ontario ends.
All right, gotcha. And then you saw probably all kinds of things, I'm sure. Well,
Yeah,
what was your like first initial thoughts like starting out?
yeah. I mean, I have spent a lot of time on the shores of Lake Ontario doing all these litter cleanups over the years. So I'm familiar with a lot of different spots, but when you're out on the lake, the perspective is so different. And there's a lot of places along the shore of Lake Ontario that aren't necessarily easily accessible from the land. So I got to see a lot of places that I had never seen before. And there was times where I didn't even really know where I was because there was nothing familiar around. There's no road signs to tell you where you are. So you're basically looking for landmarks. And in a lot of areas, like a landmark might be a pavilion that you went to and it's
Yeah.
like at a park. Like there's not a lot in some areas when it comes to actual landmarks until you get to the city and see like the CN Tower in Toronto or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, it can be really hard to navigate if you're not used to being out on the water all the time.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine. That would be a little eerie at times, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I did have my GPS with me. I had my phone with me, so I could always look at my map to figure out exactly where I was. But the good thing about my journey was, for the most part, I was just going in one direction along the shoreline, so there wasn't a huge risk of getting lost.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, so in the movie you had there was a there was one part about I can remember that was sticking out with about the fish that you saw, and I think that kind of caught you by surprise. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So before I actually did the full paddle, I did do a little test run, like a day where I paddled 30 kilometers just to make sure that I could actually do it. And so that was in at the beginning of June that I did that. And when I did the test run, I saw a lot of fish, and there was actually a lot of like carp that were jumping out of the water and stuff. And I was actually surprised to see so many fish. And then
Yeah.
in July, there was a bit of a heat wave, so I think maybe some of the fish went to deeper waters, so it was cooler. But I didn't see like any living fish. I only saw dead fish throughout the month of July, and it was like big ones, small ones, and it was very concerning because it's not something I expected. And I saw so much wildlife on the water, like more than I could have ever anticipated. I saw a new species almost every single day I went out. And
Wow.
yeah, like just seeing all those dead fish, it just made me wonder, like, why did this happen? Like, is it partially maybe because of the heat wave, the higher temperatures in the lake? Is it from pollution? Like obviously some fish maybe die of natural causes, but
Hmm.
yeah, just to see so many dead fish was really concerning for me.
Yeah, that's it's very interesting how something like that you don't really know, and there's not a big discussion about it. I mean, the lake that I live on, it's a smaller inland lake. It's still connected though through some of the other lakes in the area because there's a bunch of them in the surrounding area. But they have treated in the past for just certain weeds and stuff in the lake. And there was one summer, it was kind of bad. All this carp started rising to the top of the water, dead, and some of them were huge, gigantic. And I think they overtreated the lake. Like I that was part of the scenario that people were coming up with, that they had too big of pellets or something and used too much. So carp eat anything, and
Yeah,
they that's what was happening to them.
yeah.
It was
Ugh,
kind of bad.
it's so sad. And like, I mean, in Ontario, like carp are an invasive species,
Yeah.
but still, like you don't want to see a whole bunch of dead fish all over the place.
Yeah, like people out boating or jet skiing and, hit one of those. That's like they're big. Some of them are really big. There's like a giant log.
Yeah, I know. And then like in July, I saw literally like none, except for dead ones, but like none. So I was just so shocked that the lake seemed so full of life the month before, and then there was like no fish.
Yeah. Wow. How many hours a day would you paddle?
So it depended on the weather mostly.
Uh-huh.
Because I only went out when the weather was good. Like I didn't want to have to struggle through like paddling through really harsh winds or anything like that. I wanted to make sure I was staying safe. So the shortest day was 3 hours, and I did have to get out of the water early because it did get really windy and wavy. And then the longest day was 11 hours.
Wow, that's a long day. Yeah. Which totaled up to how many days were you on the water?
So 18 days on the water and 92 hours actually paddling.
Wow. Imagine you were probably really fit after all of that.
At the end of it, yes. Not so much when I started out.
Did you do some training for it?
I did a little bit. Like I would just use my elliptical at home. I would go for runs and that kind of thing. But I didn't actually train a lot paddling because the weather wasn't great like leading up to that point. I think I got out about like 5 times before I actually did the full journey. So I mean, I did take lessons on how to paddleboard properly. So I think that helped a lot because when you have the right technique,
yeah,
that definitely helps.
Oh, it's huge.
Go ahead.
No, it's huge to have, a good paddle stroke.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like for me, I have pretty good balance. I also did a lot of yoga. So I think that helps with the core strength and the balance. So I think it was more just like the endurance that was the hard part because there were some long days, and especially if there were waves that I had to like paddle against. Surprisingly, I didn't get like my body would get tired from time to time, but I could generally push through it. And I think it's because with paddleboarding, it is like it's a challenging sport, but it's only as challenging as you make it. Like if the waves are really hard, just you don't have to paddle like a superhero to get through them. You can take your time.
Yeah.
So I think just having the option to slow down a bit, or go to shore and take a break for 15 minutes. Like I made sure that I listened to my body and did what was comfortable. And if I had to get out of the water, then I got out of the water.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Oh, some good tips. And you have your balance board behind you. Did you use that a little bit? Your balance trainer?
Yeah, so that is actually like way harder for me than paddleboarding.
Isn't that funny how like stuff like that, it seems like, well, that doesn't seem like that would really help you with paddleboarding, but honestly, it's like it's harder to do that than actually just be in the water.
Yeah. I fall off that almost every time I get on it, but I haven't fallen off my paddleboard yet.
I am victim to that as well. I have fallen trying to do some goofier stuff like on that balance trainer, and I'm like, wait a minute, I just like stumbled and fell.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's hard. You're trying to mimic water, and water's water. You don't have to, once you're out there, it's there, right? And like on land, you're trying to like create something that's non-existent. It's kind of funny. So you also lead some other things like on Instagram. I noticed that you have some with the whole cigarette butt thing, which is part of on land. You can go on a walk and see those on your walk and the shoreline as well. But how did you get started with that one, or just even raising awareness to get some volunteers?
Yeah. So I started A Greener Future 6.5 years ago. And it was basically just I went out in my community and I did a litter cleanup, and I realized that doing one litter cleanup really was not solving anything.
Yeah.
The litter would come back, and I just wanted something that would help the community to stay clean and like raise awareness and get people to understand like the harm that litter causes, because not only does it look ugly, but like it's a hazard for wildlife, and then when it gets into our water systems and breaks down, it can leach out chemicals and break down into microplastics. So it's more than just ugly. Like it's a very complex issue, and the more litter I picked up, the more I realized that there's so much more that I can do. Like I was picking things up off the ground, like granola bar wrappers and stuff like that, that I had used in my life. And it made me think like, what can I do to reduce my waste so that this never happens? Because just because you put something in the garbage doesn't mean it's going to stay there. So, and I mean, it has to go somewhere, and like, it's either going to be in the landfill or in the environment. So, I think for me, it was just a really good opportunity to kind of get community members together to learn a little bit and want to protect the environment around them. And it just kind of kept growing. And I ended up getting grants. And the first big grant I got was from the provincial government. And it was the start of our Love Your Lake project, where I did 100 litter cleanups along the shores of Lake Ontario. So now we've been doing that for about 5 years.
Wow.
And every year it gets a little bit bigger, except for last year when we had to cancel everything. But just having volunteers come out and do like citizen science, like now we sift for microplastics in the sand and we collect data on everything that we pick up. And it's really cool to be able to analyze that data and come up with solutions that target certain items. And one of the top things that we pick up is cigarette litter. You can literally walk down basically any street and find cigarette butts on the ground. So that's when we came up with the Butt Blitz program, which happens every spring. We have a whole bunch of volunteers go out and pick up cigarette litter in their own communities. And right now we're running that program. We have 180 volunteers across Canada, and they've already picked up like over 200,000 cigarette butts just in like 10 days, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like, that seems huge to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot more cigarette butts out there to pick up, because in the city of Toronto alone, there's about 1 million cigarette butts littered every single day. So it's a huge problem. And I think the biggest thing about cigarette litter is that they're full of toxins. Like all of the filters hold the toxins that are in the cigarette. So then when they get into water, all those toxins leach out, and they're small enough that birds and fish think that they're food. So it's super hazardous to wildlife. And then once those toxins are in our water, like, do we even have proper filtration systems to take those chemicals out? And, you know, it's a big problem, and something that we don't even know, like, how big it is or like what the consequences are. So I think the best thing to do is like get people aware, get them to stop littering their cigarette butts. We'll pick up all the ones that are on the ground now and like fix this problem. It doesn't have to be really difficult to do. We just need to make sure that we can get our voices out there and get people to understand that it's not just throwing something on the ground. It has a chain reaction and can cause like a lot of problems long term.
Yeah, and I think that a lot is really said about that, and you could use even another example to really, you know, hone in on that topic itself. Because even when you're at the beach and you were saying like you sift for microplastics. I mean, there's sometimes when I've looked into the water where it's shallow and I'm not even really sure, is that a rock or a shell, or, you know, how would you know? And then like you just said, an animal comes along and they have no idea, you know, they're not analyzing all of that. They're just trying to find something to eat. And if it's something that's caught in the weeds, like, so, you know, like one of those weed patches that's floating and a little duck, you know, comes by and he's trying to like just find something that he wants, right? and there's this like plastic or wrapper or something, you know, in there. And and then to even break it down a little bit more with what you just said, how like there's, you know, stuff is still leaching out of that. So I know I've been thinking about that a little bit more, just because I've had on some other people that have talked about landfills and just garbage itself, and how something can keep leaching out a chemical.
Yeah.
You know, and think about it like you can't really see it, right? But think of it like an oil drop or something that, like, you know, when there is an oil spill and that just kind of like bleeds out, you can see a film.
Yeah.
But it keeps going. So like it might be over here, like 100 yards, but then the cause of it is going this way and you're standing over here and you have no idea. But like, I don't know. And like you said, you know, I mean, we just don't know, but there's got to be a theory behind most of this stuff, you know, that a chemical from a cigarette, we already know there's chemicals and toxins in a cigarette. And just like you said, what's left over is the filter. And if you just had a bunch of those in your shoreline, what's that doing really?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, we can't see it. So that's what makes it even more dangerous, because we don't even know if it's there or not. So it's a huge concern.
Right. And so you're going along picking them up and in a lot of, I'm assuming like kind of random places. I mean, you know, if I started walking down the street and I started, you know, with my grabber and just started picking up stuff. I mean, have you ever had people that ask odd questions like, what are you doing? Or do you work for the city or?
Yeah. Oh, all the time. I find a lot of people ask me for directions because they think that I'm working for the city.
Yeah.
I did have, when I was picking up cigarette butts specifically, I did have a woman come up to me and say like, oh, you don't have to do that. I can buy you a pack of cigarettes. And I was like, oh, I don't smoke. Yeah. But I mean, I've been doing this for over 6 years now. So I'm kind of just used to it. At the beginning, I was kind of not embarrassed, but like I didn't want people to think I was doing something weird. But at this point, like now I have, like, if I have a litter picker and a bucket, like I feel like most people know what I'm doing. And a lot of times people say like, oh, how can I help? Can I sign up? That kind of thing. So, which is really nice. And I think people are starting to recognize that it's something that anybody can do. You don't have to have a job as a litter picker to go out and pick up litter. Anyone can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's funny. It's ironic because the sup garbage man that I, you know, was on the podcast, overlapping messages, which is a good thing. You know, how can I help? And he's just get started. Just start. You don't have to be anybody special, you know, or you know, I guess, you know, a lot of people think they, I don't know, have to do something special, but just getting the message out there, just get started.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, why wait around for someone else to take care of it, especially when it comes to like the government or, you know, like municipalities. Like it takes them forever to like get things done. So if you see garbage somewhere, just like, you don't have to call the city and say, oh, there's garbage here, and then like 2 weeks later they come get it. Like just take care of it and then it's fixed. Right?
Exactly. Yes. I would agree. I mean, even though we're separate countries, there's still a problem. There's still trash. There's, you know, I don't know about you, but I always say trash day is the worst, because if there's wind and people you're trying to recycle, but then the wind took it away, or, I mean, not to harp on garbage men, but sometimes they're just wanting to get their job done. So, you know, something gets left behind or spilled out of the garbage can that they didn't, I don't know, it got stuck, right? And now it's now it's unstuck, right? And it's in the street, but they missed it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a lot to play on our own part, our own duty just to do it, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I can remember street cleaners. That was a thing. and I haven't seen a street cleaner in forever on just, your neighborhood street or whatever. And I, I don't know. I don't know where that went, but I think that we're on our own now. We gotta just do our part,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like another thing that I've realized is like I feel like we've gotten so far away from understanding like our connection to the earth and like what our consumption does. And like on garbage day, when I walk around my community, people are putting out like 3-4 bags of garbage for 1 week. And like that to me is insane. Like I put out a bag of garbage like once a month for my family because we've really like looked into like what we're consuming, and we try and buy things with less packaging, and it's been healthy for us because we buy less processed food. We buy a lot more actual like vegetables and like real foods that don't come in packaging. And like we go to farmers markets when we can, and just like buying less because we don't need all this stuff. Especially when it comes to like cosmetics and all of these things. Like there's so much packaging with them, and like a lot of times they just sit in our cupboard. We use them a few times and realize, oh, that didn't work as well as I thought, and then it just sits there forever. And like it's so crazy to walk out on garbage day and see like all these houses that have like 4 bags of garbage a week plus like 2 recycling bins full. And I'm like, holy cow, like this is crazy.
Yeah, it's so true,
Yeah.
Do you have a compost or anything?
Yeah, so we have municipal composting here. So we have a green bin that we can fill with any like food scraps and stuff, and then they collect it weekly, which is really, really awesome.
Wow, yeah, that's really that's like high tech. High tech without the tech.
Yeah, I know it's not common in a lot of places yet, which is unfortunate. But I mean, backyard composting, if we didn't have the option to compost through the city, then we definitely would backyard compost for sure.
Yeah, I would say that's something we would have to try to figure out, like what to do, with, I guess we've just never really researched, like how to do that, like, and if you have a dog and stuff like that, because I'm sure there's ways. It's just a matter of putting in some effort for it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the biggest thing is like for me just to keep learning and like doing better, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just like learn a little bit at a time, and like learning how to compost could be like a summer project, right?
Right.
Where, it doesn't have to be like all consuming or frustrating or overwhelming, but just like step by step, learning how to do things in a more sustainable way. And like when you run out of something, like just do a quick Google search and see if there's a more sustainable option to replace it. Or maybe you don't even need that thing at all. And just, watching documentaries and like reading books and doing internet research, watching YouTube videos, like there's so many different ways that you can learn. And I find like for me, I find it fun because it's like a challenge when I can learn something new or find like a new innovative product that is more sustainable. And you have to be really careful of like greenwashing places that are like products that say they're eco-friendly, but they're actually not. But I mean, that's part of the fun of like doing the research and like learning about these things. And that's kind of what pushes me forward, because I feel like that I have a lot of hope for new innovations and new ways to do things. So I love learning, and I love like trying things in my life to see if I can be more sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, right? Open-minded, just willing to learn, and little changes here and there. It doesn't have to be to change everything all at once, and just
that's too much. I think like just starting with like a reusable bag, and then like maybe a reusable water bottle, and then just kind of like keep going. Once you get used to those things, keep going from there, and just make small changes over time, and it makes a huge impact in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, the movie was so well put together. I have no idea how you pulled that off, but it was fascinating to watch, and just see how you pulled all that together. I mean, how cool is that, and then, to give out a message, for everyone like that. Do you have any other like bigger plans, or do you really just go about how you did that movie? You're like, I just fell into it, and look, I had awesome footage and I put it to good use.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. In a pandemic, I feel like there's no planning because everything changes every other day. So,
Yeah.
yeah, right now I'm just kind of going with the flow and like taking opportunities as they come. But I'm hoping eventually, once this pandemic is over, and there's not as many risks to like hosting public events, that we can get back to doing that. I mean, a greener future is just like constantly growing, and we have more and more interest in like volunteering and that sort of thing, which is really awesome. And I want people to be able to get that experience and like keep learning and be part of this community that we're fostering, because like picking up garbage doesn't sound all that fun, but when you're with the right people, and like you have like really great conversations and you find cool things. Like sometimes we find like money, sometimes we find toilet seats, like you never know what you're going to find. So it's just like a really fun adventure to have with people.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to getting back to that place where we can actually host events. But until then, like I'm okay with doing virtual things. Like we're thinking of doing like trivia night, or and doing some more webinars and like Instagram lives, and just like interacting in any way that we can right now that's safe. And like hopefully doing more screenings of the documentary. We're trying to find a buyer for it so that we can have like a permanent place to put it. But we want to get that message out there, and it wasn't just me that made the movie. I was in it, but I have to give a lot of credit to my staff. So Paul and Chelsea, they're actually like the producers, editors of the film. They put it all together, and they actually filmed a lot of it too. So they were the ones that were on the shore following along with me and like picking up litter and that sort of thing. And then I also had a summer employee named Doug that did a lot of the footage as well. So they put a lot of work into actually creating this documentary after we had done the project. So I'm so impressed with what they like created. I couldn't even do like a quarter of what they did. Like they did an amazing job, and I'm so happy.
Oh, they did great. Yeah. So Paul, Chelsea, and Doug.
Yes.
Nice shout out. There was something I was just going to ask you. Oh, in the movie, I think you found something crazy. Or what is the craziest thing that you have found that really drives home the message about how things just, where things land and how they wind up? You never know.
Yeah. I think so. A lot of people, when they think of litter, they think of like someone that threw their coffee cup on the ground, or, like a straw or whatever, right? And we do find a lot of that, but there's some things that end up in the lakes that are not necessarily what we would think of as litter. So we find a lot of like construction materials and debris and stuff, like either from windy days or storms or whatever. Like if there's flooding, then it can cause a lot of damage on the shore and like actually suck things into the water. So what we're finding isn't always like the typical litter. We do find nurdles, which are plastic pellets used in manufacturing new plastic goods. So they're just tiny little pellets of plastic, and a company will order them and melt them down and pour that into their molds to make new items. And there's been a few spills on the Great Lakes, so we do find a lot of nurdles. And another thing is sewage bypasses or combined sewage overflows, which can be really gross, because what it means is if there's like high levels of rain or snow melting or whatever, all of that going into the sewage system, like in through the storm drains and stuff. Mm-hmm. If the water levels are too high, the water filtration plants can't process the waste fast enough. and they just let it go raw into the lake. So I did actually see like a few slicks of raw sewage where there's like compacted toilet paper and like brown greasy stuff on the surface of the
Yeah.
lake. It's smelly, and there's like tampon applicators and condoms and syringes and, basically anything that someone's flushed down the toilet. And that is not something that you want to be swimming in. So,
No.
so gross.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's why I'm like cringing, because it happens. It happens near me too. Like I said, some of the little lakes that surround the Thumb, that are connected to the Detroit River and Lake Huron, then eventually goes to Lake Erie, which Lake Erie I think is probably the one with the most problems on this side. I don't know. I'm actually not like that well educated about why that is, but they have like all the algae blooms and
I think because it's shallower, it gets warmer. Yeah.
Yeah. That's part. Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
Yeah.
that sewage that happens out here. If there's a major storm, just what you said, it's the same exact thing as if there's a huge storm that it can't handle all the water and everything, it goes out into the lake. And unfortunately, the spot where it happens, there's a beach. So the beach, I can remember even as a kid, has closed multiple times, but I don't think anything has gotten any better because now we have population growth, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's the thing, like it's not something that can easily be fixed because it's old infrastructure that needs to be updated, which takes time and money. And if people don't know about the problem, then how are they going to voice their concerns that this needs to be fixed? So it's one of those things that we really need people to know that this is happening so they can say like, no, let's fix this.
Yeah. And who knows what people are thinking? I don't, because that's, like I said, has gone on for a while. And then, unfortunately, we were there for, it was a paddleboard kayak thing, and they still held it. And we were standing there like in awe, like, is this seriously still happening? Because it had rained. It was like at the perfect storm. It had rained, and then that had flushed out, and you could see it, just like you said. And can I make heads or tails out of it? Not really, but it was black. It didn't look like it's something that belonged in water, and it certainly didn't look like something that I would want to paddleboard in. Or
so gross.
So it was so strange that they still held the event. And I get it. I guess you don't want to cancel and reschedule, but
so dangerous though. Like if someone falls in, they have like a huge risk of getting sick. Like the E. coli levels would be through the roof.
That's sort of where we were at with it. Me and my husband were standing there going, man, I hope no one has a cut on their ankle or, I hope everyone's kind of aware of what's going on here, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, it's really sad and gross to see. And I just think about like how many cities or communities have old infrastructure on the Great Lakes, because I feel like this is probably something that happens like daily on the lakes, where somewhere on one of the Great Lakes, there's sewage being flushed straight into the lake. And I mean, if it was just happening here and there, I mean, it would be able to disperse and settle and be reabsorbed, because most of it is like natural stuff. Like, well, not all of it. People shouldn't be flushing things down the toilet that don't belong in the toilet. But I mean, just the volume of it, like coming from a city like Toronto that has more than 3 million people, like that, it can be a lot. And especially it's so close to shore, and like all this stuff washes up, and we often pick up like tampon applicators off the beach, and that's what it's from.
Yeah, it's interesting conversation, because if you were to even talk to a plumber and you go right to the root of the source, and he would tell you about his crazy stories of what, like those wipes that are not biodegradable and that get flushed, and that causes that causes problems, not just environmentally, but of course, now you're talking infrastructure, like how things get blocked, and what he sees at the end, he's like, you would have you get him and get an experienced plumber on the conversation, and he's going to tell you like, all right, this is what I've seen.
Yeah.
that's from going back to, like I said, the root of the source, where it comes from, how it gets started. It's so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the theory of like how it's all interconnected, like, yeah. I mean, here, we're sitting and talking about Great Lakes and how it's all connected, and then taking the hand, right, and like how all of that channels out, and same for the sup garbage guy that is on the Potomac, and he's talking about what comes down from him, and he's then dealing with the tide, and who knows how things move around that way, but he finds some crazy stuff like on his Instagram. I'm just like, wow, that's I don't see that kind of stuff on this little inland lake that I'm on. Mostly, I think I said was boring, but it's still, something that ends up in the lake. It's a bag, a plastic bag, a wind or whatever took something away.
Yeah.
So I know I've tried to do my part whenever I even hold classes out here. There was one time I kind of left some people. I was like, I'm not leaving you. I just see a giant plastic bag over there. I'm going to get it. I'll be right back. Because they were inexperienced. They're like, where are you going? Like, I'm just going to go pick this up really quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like if we all did our part, it would make a huge difference. And I feel like people need to get out of the mindset where it's like, oh, I didn't put it there, it's not my problem.
Right.
Because, I mean, we all drop things get blown out of our garbage cans, like things happen. And I think we all kind of just have to take care of each other. And if you see garbage on the ground, like pick it up. It's not that big of a deal, and it will make a big improvement, because if that like plastic bag sits there for an extended period of time, it's going to break apart and make like a whole bunch of new problems and like plastic bits everywhere. So just take care of it at the start, and it will make things so much better. And I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like we all live in the same place. Like that's our shared drinking water. We grow our food in this shared soil. So like we want it to be clean. We want healthy food. We want clean drinking water. So, if it takes a couple seconds to pick something up off the ground, it shouldn't be a big deal.
Right. We shouldn't become accustomed to, oh, well, that just happens, Well, I mean, whether it's the negative thought or it's just that this is what we need to become used to. It's like, I would fear or dread that, like, that we get to go paddleboarding in water that you don't want to get your feet in. And we're like, that's just the way it is now. I mean, that would be terrible. I wouldn't want to be like that. And I mean, that's sort of how, I feel about launching a board, and you go there and you're like, wow, what's all of this? Whether it was just intentional left behind trash or not, it's not something that we should become accustomed to. Adapt that.
Yeah. And I feel like cigarette butts are the biggest example. Like people just walk by them all the time and don't even realize they're there anymore because we're so used to seeing them.
It's so bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bad. I mean, what a funny story for you though, that someone, hey, I'll buy you some. You don't have to pick it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're just trying to see the positive out of it. I really liked, I keep talking about Sub Garbage Man, but it's just because that, it was a similar stories, but I liked his, perspective on that, what kept him in a positive state, that, at least I get to go out and paddleboard and see a sunset or a sunrise. And, I'm picking up trash along the way that is somewhat disappointing, but at the end of the day, I still see this as a positive message, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what inspires me most is the fact that when people come out and like help with litter cleanups, they get inspired and they want to do more. And like the conversations we have are amazing. And just to see like the smile on people's faces when they can feel good about doing something in their community and like connect with other people that care about the same thing, it just really like brings things together for me and makes me feel like, yeah, picking up the garbage is important, but I think just the human connection where we can all take care of the planet and take care of each other is so important, especially like during a pandemic when it's so hard to connect with other people.
Right.
Through the Butt Blitz, we've been hosting Zoom meetings to talk about like what we've found and like conversations we've had and that kind of thing. And I think that really helps bring it together so that we feel like we're actually on a team together and doing something together, because even though we're all apart right now, it doesn't mean that we have to just sit here and wait it out. We can still do things and take action and keep learning and you know, just be part of our communities, even though we can't be close together.
Yeah, and I definitely sharing, you know, even in a podcast, you know, message for just people to be a little more aware of their surroundings and noticing what is around them. And maybe it is a little change in, you know, instead of a water bottle, a plastic one, it's, you know, something that's refillable, you know, that kind of thing. I know we just had a sample of our water sent out to be tested and waiting to see the results. We have a filter on our refrigerator, so we always refill, never buy plastic water bottles. But anyway, just waiting to see. It was kind of interesting that they were offering these free samples that you could do, and you just send it in and they'll test it and give you the results.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's the other thing. Like, we have to all do like what we can. And I know for some people, clean drinking water isn't available, so they have to use bottled water. Right. And I mean, I have nothing against that, because I think there's certain situations where you need to prioritize. And even with the way that I do things, like when I try and buy things without packaging, like there's lots of places that you just have no option with the food that you buy.
Right.
So, I mean, there's not a perfect solution for everything, but I think just taking the time to look into the options that each individual can make does make a difference, because there's not a one size fits all for like sustainability, but I think just taking it upon yourself to do the research and change the things you can is a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a very good point for sure. You know, and I mean, like you say, collectively as a whole, if we can try to do the best we can with, you know, the cards we're dealt, maybe, and you know, just go from there. You know, it's all with a good intention. You know, yeah. So I I make lip balms, and you know, of course, lip balm is always in that plastic tube, which is protective, of course, and I can accidentally wash this in the washing machine, and usually it's fine. But they have eco tubes, and I love them, and I try, you know, to promote them, and a lot of people they gravitate right to it. Of course, why would I use plastic? And I understand there's downfalls, because like I just said, because it's happened to me, I've accidentally washed mine and it just deteriorated.
Yeah.
I mean, it holds up likewise. If you do get it a little wet, because I have a SPF one I used all summer, and of course the tube, it gets a little greasy or a little funny looking, but inside is still fine, you know.
Yeah.
And I've taken it on paddles and stuff like that, and you know, I don't know, maybe some people would find that just like not sanitary, but I'm just, you know, just trying to do the best I can with a product. You know, sometimes I still put them in plastic. Just there's you know, I have different flavors, so it's like, you know, I try to accommodate to all the aspects out there, right? Like,
Yeah.
So it's just another one of those kind of examples of just trying to do what you can.
Exactly. And I think like moving forward, innovation is going to kind of like speed up more because there's more demand for products that are sustainable. So we might be using cardboard lip balms for a little while and maybe not be the happiest with how they perform. But I mean, just around the corner, there might be something better.
Yeah,
So
that's true too. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure. Because it's 100% biodegradable.
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun. So I mean, like I said, it's another thing just trying to reach out and or research about, different ways. And I have some metal tins too, so at least that's reusable if you
Yeah, yeah. Can refill it for
yeah,
sure.
refill it or do something else with it, make your own little thing. So that's what I try to do sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that's like it's awesome that you're already in that headspace to look for these options because for a lot of people the environment is like the furthest thing from their mind and that's fine. I don't expect everyone to be an environmentalist because that would be kind of boring. But it's really really cool when people like learn about these new things and try them out and I mean it's not easy to be like live a sustainable life, but I think every action does count. And I really love when people that are not necessarily environmentalists like try these things and like support environmental companies. And it's really important, especially when it comes to like driving sustainability forward.
Yeah, that's definitely true for sure. If anyone wanted to see the movie, how would they go about doing that?
So at the moment, we do not know when our world premiere is going to be
Ah,
because
okay.
we're trying to figure out who is going to be the host of that world premiere. So
Hmm.
we have some meetings coming up with film distributors
Oh,
and
cool.
that sort of thing. So
Wow.
we're waiting to hear back to see exactly where we might put the documentary more permanently. Um, so I'm thinking like within the next month we should probably have a better idea of like what we're going to do with it, whether we're going to just maybe do a screening at a film festival as like the world premiere, or if we end up with a distributor that wants to put it on their platform. So yeah, it's kind of up in the air right now, but we will be having like a world premiere at some point. And when we know the date, it will be on our website and it will
Cool.
be on our social media.
Awesome. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, congrats. That's great.
Thank you.
That's super cool. Probably a lot of different avenues that you could go. I'm just like, I don't know, brainstorming, thinking like all these, ways. That's so cool.
Yeah, the film industry is tough. When we created this documentary, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into
Yeah.
because it's very competitive. And I mean, it's hard to like get your work out there because there are so many amazing films being made. So we just want it accessible for people. We want people to be able to see it. So
Yeah.
finding the perfect partner that can like guarantee that for us. That's kind of what we're looking for, a place where we can host it online where people can watch it. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Is there any other little snippet from the movie that you could throw out there and have people just be excited to wait for it to come out?
yeah, like I watching it back, I can't believe I did that. I think just like it's unbelievable to me that I actually did that. And
Right.
I think just seeing how like I consider myself like an average person. Like I'm not like I wasn't always an environmentalist even. I did go to fashion school before I went to environmental school. So I think just the fact that people can see like how one person can make such a big change when it comes to like awareness around plastic pollution in the lake is important because like anybody could do what I did if they really wanted to. There's a lot of people that wouldn't want to do that and that's
Sure.
fine. But I mean, if someone really really wanted to do it, they could do it. And I think it goes for anything. Like, if you really want something to change, then keep working towards it, and like one stroke at a time, basically, like until you get there. Sure. And I think that's kind of the underlying message of the film, is that you don't have to be like an extraordinary person to make change. Anybody can make change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what an important way to just, put the message out there for people, to be inspired, and, know that, what, like you said, one stroke or one step at a time, and, just be consistent with it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, for 6 years, that's impressive, and you just kind of like fell into this, creative hole of filmmaking and all of that. And it's that's fun. That's, it's like, yeah, it's about environment and trash, but look, it came out as something else, and in a way to share the message. How cool is that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't intend to actually start a nonprofit 6.5 years ago. Like, I just kind of did something that I thought was important, and it just kept snowballing. And then now here we are, and I can't imagine doing anything different. And I just love that I get to do things like make a documentary, and, like meet new people, and do podcasts, and like do all these cool things. Like, I never would have imagined it, but here we are, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. How fun. I love it. That's so cool. I love the message, in the film. Kudos to, was it Paul, Chelsea, and Doug? That was awesome. Yeah. So we enjoyed it. We put it up on the big screen, and we, mirrored it from the iPad or whatever, and had a little Thursday night viewing of it, and had fun.
I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah. I love the feedback that we've gotten so far about the film, because I think that's the thing, is like with a lot of environmental films, it doesn't have a lot of like solutions, and it can be very doom and gloom, but that's not what A Greener Future is about. We're more about like inspiring people to actually want to do something. So we wanted the film to reflect that. And I hope that it leaves people with like a sense of optimism and like inspiration to actually do something in their communities.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It was spread the word, spread the message.
Yeah.
I saw all those Tim Horton cups in the film, and we have Tim Hortons here too, actually. Yeah. But just a funny tie. We're so close to Canada.
Yeah. We find a lot of those, and hopefully that will change. But I mean, without putting them in the film, then people wouldn't know that it's such a big problem. So
yeah. You're like, I'm just saying.
Yeah, it is a problem.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's so fun having you on. I loved, swapping stories, talking about paddleboarding, and how else would anybody find you?
So agreenerfuture.ca is our website, and we have information about like everything we do. We have a lot of educational resources on there, any of our events, including virtual events. So, you don't have to live in Ontario to have access to any of that, or to come to our events. And our Instagram is our main social platform. So it's just at A Greener Future as well.
Awesome. Great. Well, we're looking forward to this movie. We don't know how we're going to see it yet, but let's hope it gets out there some way.
Yes, it will. It will. Mm-hmm. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the chat. It was a lot of fun.
What a strong message. Greener Future. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for tuning in, listening to the message. And I'm super stoked about wholeheartedly believe in the positive message behind the environmental issues or impacts that people are doing and becoming more aware of. So just get started one piece at a time, even if it's in your backyard or just on your walk, right? I hope you guys are really enjoying the podcast. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's been a great networking tool with people from all over the place. And I'm getting that map where I start to cross off or pinpoint where I've seen or where I've had people on for the podcast. So how cool is that? And check out the YouTube, check out the audio version of this, and I will put Greener Futures Instagram and handles in the show notes. So go check it out.